I want you to know who my wife is before I tell you what our daughter-in-law did to her. My wife's name is June. She turned 62 last March, and she spent her birthday the same way she spends most of her free time, in the kitchen, making her famous lemon pound cake, one for us and one for the elderly couple 2 doors down who can't drive anymore. That's the kind of person she is. She doesn't make a big deal out of it, she just does it. She's been doing things like that for as long as I've known her, which is going on 38 years now. June grew up in a small town in eastern Tennessee, the kind of place where you brought food to every funeral, every new baby, every divorce, whether you knew the family well or not. Her mother taught her that. Her grandmother taught her mother. It wasn't just cooking, it was the way you showed people they mattered. June carried that with her into our marriage, into raising our son, into every holiday we've ever hosted or attended. I'm not telling you this to make her sound like a saint. She has her stubbornness. She holds grudges longer than she should sometimes. She once didn't speak to me for 4 days over a comment I made about her sister's potato salad. But when it comes to her family, to the people she loves, June gives without measuring. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Our son, Kyle, is 34. He's a project manager for a construction firm in Columbus, Ohio. He's a good kid, man I should say, though it still feels strange. He was always the type who followed the rules, kept his head down, never wanted conflict. I used to think that was a virtue. I've since revised that opinion somewhat. He married his wife, Dara, about 4 years ago. They met through mutual friends, dated about 2 years, got engaged, and had a wedding that June spent 8 months helping plan. June made all the centerpieces by hand. She drove up to Columbus 3 separate weekends to help with venue walkthroughs and cake tastings. She didn't complain once. She was genuinely happy to do it. I thought Dara was fine at first. A little reserved, a little formal with us, but I figured that was just nerves. Some people take time to warm up. June was patient. She always is. But there were signs early that I think we both chose to overlook. Little things. Dara rarely said thank you. Not in a rude way. Just in a way that suggested she didn't quite register that things required gratitude. When June would bring food over during the holidays, Dara would sort of accept it the way you accept delivery from a restaurant. She'd check the containers, make sure everything was there, maybe say something like, "Great, we needed more of this," and move on. Not a lot of warmth, not a lot of acknowledgement. I mentioned it to June once, early on. She told me I was being uncharitable. Maybe I was. I let it go. What I couldn't let go of, though I tried, for years, was the way Kyle would go quiet whenever his wife spoke about our visits or holidays. He'd sort of pull back, become very neutral, look at the table. I recognized the look. It was the look of someone who had learned that inserting himself into certain conversations wasn't worth the cost. I didn't say anything about it, but I noticed. We live in Knoxville. Kyle and Dara are about 4 hours north of us. We usually see them 3 or 4 times a year. Thanksgiving, Christmas, maybe a summer visit, and one more around fall. June always makes the drive up excited. She always comes home a little quieter than she left. Last year around early October, I got a text from Kyle, not from Dara. From Kyle. It said they were planning to host Christmas this year, a big one, and that Dara had some ideas she wanted to run by us. I texted back that we were happy to help however we could. I showed it to June, and she smiled and said, "I hope they let me bring my sweet potato casserole." I remember thinking that was a reasonable thing to hope. About a week later, June came into the living room where I was watching a game. She had her phone in her hand, and she looked like she was trying to work out a math problem in her head. She sat down next to me, didn't say anything for a second, and then she handed me her phone. It was a message from Dara. Not a text, an email. An actual email formatted with a subject line that read, "Christmas dinner, division of responsibilities." I read it twice. Dara had organized a dinner for 22 people. Her parents were coming, her sister and brother-in-law, some cousins, and a few people I'd never heard of, including apparently a coworker of Kyle's she'd become close with, and that woman's husband. The dinner was at Kyle and Dara's house. It was scheduled for 6 in the evening. The email contained a list, 16 items, turkey and dressing, mashed potatoes made from scratch, 3 different vegetable sides, 2 kinds of pie, a cranberry sauce, dinner rolls, a charcuterie board for when guests arrived, sparkling cider for the kids, a specific cocktail Dara had found on Pinterest, and a few other things I'm probably forgetting. Beside each item was a name or initials. Beside most of them were June's initials, JH. At the bottom of the email, Dara had written, "June, I know you're the best cook in the family, so I want to make sure the food is in good hands. I'm handling decorations, logistics, and hosting duties, so the kitchen will really be your zone. Plan to arrive by 9 in the morning. The oven situation can get complicated, so earlier is better. I sat there for a moment. 9 in the morning, I said. June nodded. For a 6 o'clock dinner. She nodded again. I handed her back her phone. What did you say to her? June looked at the screen. I haven't said anything yet. That night, I didn't sleep well. I lay there thinking about the phrase, the kitchen will really be your zone, and the more I turned it over, the worse it sounded. Not an invitation, not a request, an assignment. Given by someone who had decided, without asking, that my wife's role at Christmas dinner was to cook for 22 people and be grateful for the opportunity. I thought about all the times June had driven 4 hours to be there. All the meals she'd brought, all the weekends she'd rearranged, all the effort she'd put in without being asked and without being thanked properly. And I thought about the way Kyle had looked at the table during those dinners. Not quite there, not quite defending anything, just waiting for the moment to pass. In the morning, I asked June what she was thinking. She was quiet for a while. She refilled her coffee and stood at the window looking out at the yard. It was one of those gray October mornings where everything is damp and still. I feel like if I say no, she said, it becomes a whole thing. It's already a whole thing, I said. She just doesn't know it yet. June didn't answer that. She just looked out the window. I want to be honest about this part because I think it matters. June is not a pushover in her regular life. She ran a small catering business for 11 years before she retired early. She managed staff, she negotiated contracts, she dealt with difficult clients without losing her composure. She is not a woman who struggles to speak up. But with Kyle, she has always been softer. He's her only child. There was a rough stretch when he was in his mid-20s, some financial trouble, some distance between us, and June had worked hard to rebuild that relationship. I think somewhere in the back of her mind, she was always afraid that pushing back too hard on anything related to Kyle's household would cost her that closeness again. She never said it in those words, but I knew it was there. So she wrote back to Dara, politely. She said she'd be happy to help with several dishes and named a few, but she also suggested that with a dinner that size, it might be good to spread the cooking around a bit, maybe bring in Dara's sister for a few items, maybe order the rolls from a bakery. Dara responded the next morning. She said she understood, but that June's cooking was really what made the holidays special, and she'd hate for the quality to drop. She said her sister wasn't really kitchen confident. She said the bakery rolls were fine, but not the same as homemade. She closed by saying she knew June could handle it, and she really appreciated her going the extra mile for the family. She had not adjusted the list at all. I read that response and I felt something shift in me. Not anger exactly, something quieter, more settled, like a decision being made without noise. I asked June how she felt. Tired, she said. I feel tired. You haven't even started cooking yet, I said. She looked at me. I know. That evening I went to the computer and I started looking at things. Not houses, not cars. Trips. I had been thinking about this for a while in a loose, someday kind of way. June had mentioned more than once that she'd always wanted to see Savannah at Christmas time, that she'd seen pictures of the squares all lit up, and it looked like something from another world. We'd talked about it vaguely, the way you talk about things when you're not sure you'll ever actually do them. I looked up a hotel in the historic district. I looked at availability for December 23rd through 27th. I found a place with a courtyard and a fireplace in the room and breakfast included, and it was not cheap, but it wasn't impossible either. We had some money set aside. We'd been careful over the years. I sat there for a while, looking at the confirmation screen. Then I booked it. I didn't tell June that night. I wanted to think about how to say it. I wanted to make sure I was doing it for the right reasons, not just because I was angry at Dara's email, but because June deserved it. Because she had spent a long time putting other people's needs ahead of her own quiet ones, and because Savannah at Christmas was something she'd wanted and we'd never made time for. The next morning was a Saturday. June was making breakfast, just eggs and toast, nothing complicated. I came in and sat down at the kitchen table and I told her what I'd done. She stopped what she was doing and turned around. You booked a hotel, she said. In Savannah, I said. The historic district. 4 nights. There's a fireplace in the room. She stared at me. Christmas Eve through the 27th, I said. She turned back to the stove and was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, What about Kyle? We'll let him know, I said. We're not disappearing. We'll see them another time. Dara sent that list, she said. Not like an argument, just stating a fact. I know, I said. She flipped the eggs over. I could see her thinking. After a while she said, she's going to be furious. Probably, I said. Kyle will be upset. Maybe, I said, or maybe he'll understand. June was quiet for another minute. Then she put the eggs on a plate and brought them to the table and sat down across from me and put her hands flat on the surface, the way she does when she's made up her mind about something. I'm in, she said. It was the most certain she'd sounded in months. We talked for a long time that Saturday morning. We talked about Kyle, about the relationship, about what we were and weren't willing to accept going forward. June said she wasn't doing it out of spite. She wanted me to know that. She said she just wanted one Christmas where she sat down and ate a meal someone else had made, where she wasn't on her feet from 9 in the morning, where she didn't come home exhausted and somehow feel like she hadn't done enough. She said, I just want to be a guest somewhere, just once. I told her she deserved that. I meant it. We decided to write a letter. Not a text, not an email, an actual letter, printed out, left somewhere Kyle would find it. We debated for a while about timing. We didn't want to leave it too early and turn the next 2 months into a drawn-out thing. We decided on the week before Christmas, after we'd already packed and arranged for our neighbor's son to check on the house. In the meantime, we told no one. Thanksgiving came and went. We stayed home that year, just the two of us, and June made a small turkey breast and her sweet potato casserole, and we ate at the dining room table with the good plates and watched old movies all evening. It was the best Thanksgiving we'd had in years. I remember thinking that was telling. Kyle called a few times over the following weeks. He asked how things were going, mentioned the Christmas plans, said Dara was deep in planning mode. I kept my voice even. I said things like, sounds like it'll be a big gathering, and we're looking forward to a restful holiday. All of which was true. The letter was June's idea in terms of tone. She didn't want it to be angry. She didn't want it to be a list of grievances. She just wanted it to be honest. We worked on it together over 2 evenings, talking it through, June typing and me suggesting, and both of us revising until it felt right. It said we loved Kyle, and that wasn't going to change. It said we'd made plans to be away for Christmas this year, and we were sorry for the late notice. It said we hoped the dinner was wonderful, and that we'd find a time to celebrate together in January. It said, simply and without drama, that we'd realized we needed some time to rest and recharge, and that Savannah at Christmas time had been on our list for a long time. It did not mention the email. It did not mention the list. It did not say anything that required a defense or an argument. It was just the truth. We left on December 22nd. We drove down to Knoxville's west side first, stopped at Kyle's usual grocery store, and I left the envelope with the store manager with Kyle's name on it, and a note saying he'd be stopping by that afternoon. Kyle always did his last-minute grocery run there, and I knew it. I wasn't going to leave it at his house where Dara might find it first. Then we got on I-75 South and drove. I don't know exactly what I expected to feel. Something complicated, maybe. Some guilt, some uncertainty. But what I mostly felt, as the miles went by and the Tennessee hills flattened out into Georgia, was relief. June had her feet on the dashboard, something she does on long drives that she's been doing since 1991, and she was looking out the window, and she looked easy. She looked like herself, the version of herself that doesn't have anything to manage or smooth over. She found a playlist on her phone, old songs we both like, and turned it up a little. Neither of us talked much for the first 2 hours, and it didn't need anything said. We got to Savannah just after dark. The squares were lit with white lights the way June had always imagined them. She made me pull over twice before we even got to the hotel so she could look. She said, "Oh, it really is," and I knew what she meant. The hotel was everything I'd hoped. Old building, thick walls, the fireplace in the corner that actually worked. We had dinner that first night at a small restaurant nearby. Just the two of us, a table by the window, no list of things to prepare, no timeline, no one else's expectations for the evening. We split a bottle of wine and shared a dessert and talked about things we haven't talked about in years. Not logistics, not family dynamics, not whose feelings needed managing. Just us. Things we remembered, things we were looking forward to, places we still wanted to go. June said at one point, "I don't remember the last time I felt like a person and not a function." I didn't say anything. I just reached across the table and held her hand. Kyle called at 10:45 that night. I saw his name on my phone. I let it ring. June saw my face and looked at the screen and then looked back at her wine glass. Neither of us said anything. He called again 20 minutes later. I sent it to voicemail. In the morning, I listened to the messages. Kyle's voice was careful, not angry, not panicked, but clearly shaken. He said he'd gotten our letter. He said he was confused. He asked me to call him back when I had a chance and said he hoped we were okay. There was a second voicemail, this one left around midnight. I didn't recognize the number for a second, and then I realized it was from Dara's cell phone. She said our name wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Hayworth, when our name is Harwick, and her voice had that particular quality of someone trying to sound composed while being neither. She said she didn't understand what was going on, that she'd been counting on us, that the dinner was in 3 days, and she didn't know how she was going to manage. She said it wasn't fair. She said she hoped we'd reconsider. I put the phone back on the nightstand. June was still asleep, curled toward the window, the morning light coming in soft through the old curtains. I thought about 16 items. I thought about 9 in the morning. I thought about the kitchen will really be your zone, and I know you can handle it. And the way Kyle had looked at the table so many times, not quite present, not quite willing to say anything. I thought about June saying she just wanted to be a guest somewhere, just once. I did not call back. We had breakfast downstairs that morning. Biscuits and gravy, strong coffee, fresh orange juice. June ordered a second cup of coffee and sat back in her chair and looked around the old dining room with the high ceilings and the worn wooden floors and said, I could eat here every morning. I told her we had 3 more days. She smiled at that the way she used to smile when something genuinely surprised her in a good way. Full face, no holding back. We spent Christmas Eve walking. Savannah has a way of making you slow down whether you want to or not. The streets, the trees, the squares, the old store fronts all seem arranged to make rushing feel beside the point. We went into a few shops. June bought a small ceramic ornament with a hummingbird painted on it and said it would go on the tree next year. We found a bookstore tucked into a narrow building and spent an hour in there, which is something we haven't done together in longer than I care to admit. That night, we went back to the restaurant. The owner recognized us from the night before and gave us the same table. I thought that was a nice thing. On Christmas Day, Kyle texted. He said Merry Christmas, he loved us. He was sorry he hadn't called back. He'd wanted to give us space. He said the dinner had been a challenge, but they'd managed. He said he hoped we were somewhere warm and peaceful, and that he'd like to talk in the new year. I read that text several times. I noticed what it said and what it didn't say. It didn't say Dara was upset, though I was certain she was. It didn't say we'd been wrong to go, though I'd half expected that. It said he'd wanted to give us space. It said he hoped we were somewhere peaceful. I think, and I might be wrong about this, I think some part of Kyle had understood something in that letter. Not all of it, maybe. But something. I showed it to June. She read it, and put the phone on the table, and looked out at the square below our window, the fountain in the center, and the live oaks and the white lights still strung through the branches, and she was quiet for a while. Then she said, we should get him something nice, for January, when we see them. That's who she is. Even then. We drove home on the 27th. The drive back felt different from the drive down, easier in a different way. The way you feel after something has been resolved even if it hasn't technically been resolved yet. June found the same playlist, and we went through Tennessee in the early afternoon, with the low winter sun through the windshield. And somewhere around Chattanooga, she fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head tipped toward the window. I drove for a while with the music low, thinking about the last 4 days, about the letter, about the call I hadn't answered, about that text from Kyle on Christmas morning, about June in the bookstore, about the ornament with the hummingbird, about the way she'd said, I could eat here every morning, like it was the most uncomplicated happiness she'd felt in a long time. We met with Kyle in January, just the 2 of us and him. No Dara. She had a work thing, or that's what he said. We sat at a diner near his office and had lunch, and it was the most honest conversation I've had with my son in years. He didn't make excuses for the email, but he also didn't throw his wife under the bus. He said he should have spoken up sooner, and he was sorry he hadn't. He said he knew things had been hard on his mother, and he'd been trying to keep peace in ways that hadn't actually kept peace. He looked older to me that afternoon, not in a bad way, more like himself. June told him she loved him, and she meant it, and she told him that loving him didn't mean she was available to be taken for granted. And she said it without anger, just clearly, the way she used to talk to him when he was small and had done something she needed him to understand. He listened. Really listened. I don't know what the future looks like exactly. Things with Dara are still a work in progress. She sent a short email after the new year that was politely worded and didn't quite apologize for anything, but was something like a first step. June responded warmly, "She's better at that than I am." What I know is that we have a hummingbird ornament on the tree now, from Savannah, and every time June looks at it, she gets a small, quiet smile. And I know that when she said "I'm in" at the kitchen table that October morning, something changed, not just our Christmas plans, but something between us, some decision she made to be a person first and an obligation second. I know I booked that hotel for her, but somewhere on the drive down, somewhere around the Georgia state line with the music on low and the last light on the hills, I understood that she had given me something too. She'd let me show up for her finally, in a way she'd spent too many years not asking for. I don't have a tidy lesson to wrap this up with. Just this: sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is take up the space you were always allowed to take. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for your marriage is remind each other that you're still in it. Not as parents, not as in-laws, not as the reliable ones who show up with casseroles. Just as two people who chose each other and are still, after 38 years, choosing each other. We're already talking about where to go next Christmas.